Hey, welcome to Vortex Garage. Let's give you a little update on how things are going on our '89 Jaguar XJS. All right, so when we last left, we had obviously gotten the car running, and then we do have an inspection video that we did that digs a little deeper. Well, as you can see, we've started doing a lot more on this car. Now, one of the big things we've been trying to do here is just get the thing on the road so that we can enjoy it, but realizing that that means a whole lot of things have to happen, and you fall into the trap of, well, if I'm doing this, well, there's about 30 other things that I should probably do while I'm at it, and really trying to decide what is the correct amount of things to do so that we can enjoy the car, but keep it safe. So here's the conundrum that we're having with this car. It's now springtime officially, it's toward the end of March, and I sort of set a deadline to take this car out on Easter Sunday, which is 9 days from now. Now, I set that deadline about 7 days ago, so I've not given myself a ton of time to go through and do everything. Like I said, I lost the time over the winter with other projects. I wasn't able to go through and make everything perfect and immaculate under there. So if I am going to take the car out in the spring and enjoy it, I have to kind of weigh a little bit about what I should do versus what I could do and should just put off for another time. And as we talk about in the inspection video, the book from Kirby that goes into about 730 odd pages of details, everything you'd ever want to know about these cars, well, it can make for some very interesting and informative reading, but it can also make for some frightening late night reading where you read about all the different failure modes that could occur, all the ways these cars could break, and you have to sort of come to the realization that, okay, let's digest that information, dig into what we need to make the car safe and have an enjoyable time with it, but then recognize that there may be some things that we put off for later. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. We'll show you what we're doing so far. We're going to point out some things that we're not necessarily going to take right now, things that we might put off for later, and things that we're going to fix immediately. So let's show you. All right, so first off, we already talked about that we have the fuel injection rail off. We've disconnected a lot of wiring and put a lot of labels, even though I got plenty of pictures and diagrams and books and whatnot, just to make my life a little easier. We've also removed all of the ignition components, including the distributor, and I have swapped in a new set of spark plugs. So we've got those in and torqued down, so we've now started putting things back together, which is really good. But probably one of the first things we should point at while we're under here, because it's nice and visible, is our fuel injection harness. So this is the fuel injector clips, the electronics that go to the fuel injectors. And as you can see, the routing of this is along the valley and V of the engine, right in with all the heat and oil that comes in. Now, fortunately, aside from blowing this out and vacuuming it out, getting a little bit of, squirrel remnants and a few things in there, this is as clean as it is. It's actually pretty clean. Like I said, it's a relatively low mileage car, so that's a good positive thing. But this is PVC coated wire that does not like heat. And the heat that it sees down here is enough to make this wire extremely brittle and make the insulation crack and peel off, even underneath that tape where you can't see it. So you could have damage to the injector harness and not even know it. Fortunately, this car did run good after we did the initial work on it. So my current spot is that I'm probably going to leave this as is because it's working, but we are going to do some stuff to take care of it. I have on order some GLX wire, which is a special type of high heat wire insulation. We're going to basically make our own fuel injection harness. I bought a kit that has all new connectors, the correct boots. I've also going to switch it to a Deutsch connector on the other side, so the Lucar connector, which is a little out of view. I don't think that's it, but it's similar to that one under there. So it's very similar. It might be that one, actually. But at any rate, the wiring comes from around there, up underneath, and then it goes into your V and comes up. So we are going to replace that. But for the time being, I think I'm just going to leave well enough alone. Now, since I do have access, I could move this up to our intake manifold wiring, and that just gives it more airspace. It gets it off the bottom of the V. But again, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do that, because if this is old, just moving this harness around might be enough to crack it. So I'm still debating that one if I want to try. These do still feel fairly pliable here, but these are the ones that are up. This is the part that sits down in here and might be a little more crispy. So, do I want to mess with it, or do I want to wait and go ahead and build my new harness and put it in? I don't think I'm going to build the new harness and put it in during this repair session. And the only thing that you could look at and say, well, that's silly. You look at all the work you did to get there. You're going to have to pull all that apart again. Well, in reality, Yes, you're right, but the second time I do this, it'll be even faster. I think getting to this, oops, I just covered the lens. Getting to this point isn't as bad as it might look. Yes, it's a fair amount of work, but we can always decide to replace that later, and in the meantime, refresh all the gaskets and everything else under here. So there is more work we can come back to. Let's keep talking fuel. So this right here is somebody's handiwork. This was replaced at some point. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering what this is and why it's holding up our AC compressor, you have to remove the AC compressor so that you can get into your spark plugs there. So for the 1A and 1B, you got to tilt that up and get yourself the room. I tried to do it without it, and I actually had the original wrench from Jag. In fact, I have it right here. So this wrench was in the back of the car. This is the original plug wrench, and it's designed with this fancy universal so you can get in there, but I ended up breaking the porcelain, and then I spent an hour vacuuming and picking out the porcelain pieces from the spark plug well. So all in all, not a good use of my time. On the other hand, the AC compressor was 2 bolts in the back, 2 bolts in the front, and I tilted it forward, and the belt will go right back onto the right tension when I reinstall it. Super easy. So yeah, just do that. But anyway, as I was saying, this is a non-standard hose here that, oops, I did it again. All right, so this hose here had been replaced by someone. I think we talked about in the inspection video, I do have a new set of hoses for all of the fuel lines, including this feed, the ones that are here. Where's the other one? But also like the feed lines here, we've got new ones of those. So all those are going to get replaced. So this will be returned to its factory spec. Also going to take care of any vacuum lines that we see. Like I noticed here, there's a zip tie here. This is extremely loose. It's not even in there really. So I think that we're not getting proper vacuum to this right side regulator. That side's actually a little tighter, but we're going to replace all those. There's a lot of dry rot. Speaking about dry rot and talking about fuel, let's take a look at this. Excuse the insane mess here because, well, I'm messy. But here is the fuel rail with the injectors, and we are going to be doing some work on these in just a bit. But I wanted to show you this. Look at that. And that. And that. All of them are like that. So these are the rubber hoses that break and kill XJSs. And as you can see, we're certainly having that scenario here. So we're going to go through and replace all of these lines, and we're going to rebuild our injectors a little bit. We're going to ultrasonic clean them. So I'll show you what I have for that. And what I have is this. I got finally convinced to purchase one of these. I've got a few other cars that I want to do some fuel injector service on. Well, I was looking at these always on Amazon, and they seemed a little overpriced. And then I found one on eBay for a really good price, and eBay had a 20% off coupon that worked for it. So it was kind of one of those can't pass it up sort of deals. I know this thing probably is not the end-all be-all when it comes to fuel injector cleaners. There's probably much better ones out there. But for a small shop, little bits that we do and home stuff, this should be really good and open up some capabilities for us to clean these. It allows you to put them in an ultrasonic cleaner. And then there's a manifold here, which you haven't set it up yet, obviously. You can do 4 at a time. Just make sure they're spraying well. You can run mineral spirits through them. You can reverse flush them. All kinds of cool stuff. So my hope is that all of our fuel injectors are in good shape, but we're going to make sure they're clean before we put it on. So again, that was one of those things. Do I want to try to get all this set up and running, or just slap the injectors back in with the new hoses? And it's like, no, this makes sense. When we have the injectors out, let's go ahead and do that. Now, the only negative to doing what I'm doing is that next time I want to come in here and do all this work and I pull the rail, well, ideally I won't have to replace the rubber hoses, but I will need to replace all the rubber O-rings and seals. So I will have to purchase those again, which is a bit of a downer, but so be it. So back in the car, we do have the distributor out of the vehicle again, something that we decided to do because one of the most important things that's mentioned and is very keen on these vehicles is your advance weights in your centrifugal advance. And believe it or not, I don't think they're stuck on this car, but since I have the room and I have the clearance, we went ahead and pulled the distributor and that is over here. So here is our distributor now broken down into two main pieces. Here's the top piece that has your advanced capsule. That's where everything sits on, and then your cap would sit on top of there. The bottom piece here, as you can see, it goes into the engine. The seal in the back actually looks pretty good, which is nice. There's no signs on the bottom of the V of the engine of that seal being an issue, which is nice because there's a lot of challenges in terms of making that seal perfect. So we're going to leave that as is, and we're going to do a light overhaul on this. Now, the nice thing is, I think the advanced weights might actually be working. Let me pull in a tripod here and we'll show you. All right. So as we see on our distributor here, you have your two weights and you have the mechanical centrifugal advance. These bottom pieces here would actually swing out as the speed increases. And you do have a kind of a thin spring here, and then on the other side, a thicker spring. And one thing that happens, these springs are known to stretch, and we can see here our big spring does have some stretch, but that stretch and slack is taken up as it spins out. Now, what I can do here, I'm going to hold this, and then I'm going to spin here. You see how that's opening like that? I said, I'm not exactly sure how far these should go, if they should go any further than that. I think that's hitting its natural catch. And they seem to be fine. They snap back fairly fast. But at the same time, yeah, and our heavy spring is I feel springiness in it. So like I said, this is the first one of these that I've worked on. Try to get you a straight in shot there. Let's try turning off our... Okay, so again, this is one of the first one of these that I've ever worked on, so I'm not exactly sure how they should feel when they're right. I'm still going to pull this apart, and I'm going to clean this up. Let me show you what I've gotten to do this. Like I said, I've done a lot of reading and digging. This is from Krytox, which is actually a DuPont product, and it is, I think, number 2, here it is, GPL 226. So this is the 226 lubricant. And what we might do is it's basically like a PTFE impregnated heavy oil. We're going to put a little bit of that on some of the points per the Kirby book. So very specific to how it's recommended. What we want to be careful we don't want to put regular grease. We don't want to cause anything here that's going to varnish and stick and get gummy. Apparently that's what's been one of the biggest problems with these Opus distributors is originally they had a lubricant on them that over time, and possibly from engine vapors getting in from the bottom seal being bad, actually causes that to not necessarily congeal, but just harden and stick, and it causes the advances to get stuck on a lot of them. So a lot of folks who have trouble with overheating, even overheating resulting in drop valve seats, a lot of the issues with the V12, the community has really attributed that to this, which in the past was largely skipped over by a lot of Jag mechanics. So, you know, again, great experience with the book. Like I said, made good reason for me before I did anything else, pull this out and inspect it. Even though it felt like it was working on the car, I was already at the point where I could put it out on the bench, and while I have it here, just clean this and get it ready. We're not going to rebuild the entire distributor, but we're at least going to make sure that this is completely clean and lubricated at the best possible way that it's recommended. And then we can, again, enjoy the car and not have any issues with our timing. Another thing that we've done that you might not have seen, but we fixed the little bend up in the bumper. So we took care of that. We had to bend a few things and get it back in square, but that's nice. So that's back together. We are going to look at the brakes. I have in the back in the mechanical inspection, we have one fully worn brake pad that's eating into the rotor. I'm just going to do a pad swap and make sure the calipers aren't bad, and then we're going to just roll on it. Not ideal, but pads for this vehicle were, I think, $16 for that set in the back. So $16 to enjoy the car for, you know, a good part of the nice part of weather. I'll take it. And hopefully that's the case. Now, the other thing is our ABS master cylinder and our ABS pump unit over there. What are we going to do with all of this mess? Well, I do have a new accumulator ball for over there, and then we're going to go through all the tests and the bleed procedure. I'm going to try to exchange as much fluid as possible. We're going to check all the brakes and make sure that they're functional, and then hopefully this is functional enough to go drive and enjoy. I do believe that it's working, though I do believe, like most of these cars, it probably does need an accumulator ball So we're not going to do too much there. Now, long term, I would love to find a parts car. Now, I probably can't buy the parts car because I have a bad tendency to buy parts cars and make them non-parts cars. So I'd either have to find someone that already has one, find one at a junkyard, or something that is already salvaged and, you know, is branded and you can't put back on the road. So then you can't get tricked into fixing it. But what I'd like to do is find a pre-ABS car and pull all of the components, the pedal box, which I think has some very minor differences, but mainly the booster and the master cylinder. And I'd like to just completely get rid of the ABS system. I know some of you are like, why would you ever want to do that? Well, part of it is this early Tevis system. It was really revolutionary for the time, but in terms of modern ABS, it's overly complicated. There's not a lot of support for it. The parts are super expensive. The pump itself is failure prone. When it stops working, you have no rear brakes, and all you have is non-ABS front brakes, and they don't feel right when that happens. So there's just too many chances for failure. There's also been cases where I've read when the pumps have issues or whatever, you can have really errant braking issues, the car pulling very drastically to one side. I just don't want to experience any of that. So, like I said, we'll probably drive the car, see how it is, and then really gauge how quickly we want to do that. But eventually, I'm probably going to really closely look into swapping this back to a non-ABS vehicle. And of course, letting my insurance company know that I do that, which not a bad idea to at least give them a heads up. So yeah, that's kind of a quick and nerdy video of what's been happening with the XJS. We do, like I said, have that deeper inspection video, which I hope is posted before this, but if it's not, just understand there's going to be some continuity issues about what I find versus what I talked about here. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and continue our work here and hopefully just get the thing back on the road so we can enjoy it. And we'll bring you along, give you some updates of how it goes, show you when we wrap up, and hopefully take you for a nice test drive in it as well. But for today, that's it. So hope you enjoyed this. If you want to see more on this car or some of our other projects, like, subscribe, comment, all that cool stuff. Certainly helps us out. We appreciate it. So we'll see you again here on Vortex Garage.